Recording live in the Lucky Number 7 Lounge, this is Dine, Drink, Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, also known as the Baller on a Budget, and you have stumbled across episode 68, my trip report for the Cosmo in late December. Of course, we're also going to bring you some other Las Vegas news stories we thought were interesting and our patent pending drink of the day. But before we can bring you any of that excellent top shelf, amazing Las Vegas travel content, we've got to welcome in the founder of Dine, Drink Travel and Dine, Drink Vegas. Yes, I can only be speaking of the high roller, formerly of the High Plains, the leader in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer, the man who's always waiting on that limo to take him away to his next luxurious destination. I can only be speaking of Bill. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, John. How was your day in the office?
Actually, I had a surprisingly good day at work. Listeners, I happen to be transitioning jobs next year, which will involve a pay cut that I am entering into voluntarily because I would rather have my mental health over money. Today's workday represented a massive milestone towards the end of my current contract and gearing up for the job that comes after that. So other than the loss of income that may threaten things like, me getting to go to Vegas as much as I want, it's a really good day. Bill, how about you, sir?
So it was a perfectly good day at work, but it is now after 7 p.m. and I am still stone sober, and that feels very deeply wrong to me, John. And I'm wondering if you could tell our listeners about the drink of the day, because I really want to start drinking it.
Well, you sober, ain't that a kick in the head? No, today we are drinking the Rat Pack Manhattan. That's right. This is a variation on what would be called a perfect Manhattan in any other bar, but this is supposedly a favorite version of the drink enjoyed by Frank and the boys back in the day. The ingredients and ratios are as follows, although we both know Bill made a double. But anyway, the recipe says 1.5 ounces of bourbon. It does not specify, but I have some things to say about that in a minute. 3/4 ounce of sweet vermouth, which is the vermouth you normally find in a Manhattan. 3/4 ounce of dry vermouth, which is the vermouth you usually associate with martinis. 1/4 ounce of Cointreau or Grand Marnier or any other orange liqueur of your choosing. And then you can garnish this with an orange twist and or a cherry. All of the ingredients, the bourbon, vermouth, and both vermouths go into your mixing glass with ice, stir until it's cold. Then you rinse your cocktail glass with the Grand Marnier, and it says pour it out. Pour it down your throat. Take the shot. It'll be good for you. Then you pour everything into your cocktail glass, a martini glass, or in my case, a coupe, in Bill's case, a tumbler. Nobody's judging. And then garnish with your garnish of choice. Bill, what do you think of the drink, and what bourbon and orange liqueur did you go with?
So for the bourbon, I went with Old Forester. Old Forester is increasingly, it's not my bourbon of choice. It's my bourbon of choice for mixed drinks. Like if I'm sipping it neat, I am almost certainly on a casino floor, and that's the best option. Neat there, or even rocks, there are things I prefer. But if I'm making a composed cocktail, Old Forester holds up well, and it's at a price that is totally reasonable. More to the point, it's freely available here in Alabama. So for my bourbon, I used Old Forester. And then for the vermouths, I used red and white Lillet Blanc because that's what I use either for martinis or for Manhattans. So I decided to stay consistent with the theme, and I may give you the biggest shock I've ever given you on this podcast. Are you ready, John?
Yes.
I did not make a double.
Really?
Yeah, I actually made the drink exactly to specification. What I did instead, because I'm a man of science, and as a man of science, I need to do comparison and contrast. What I did instead was I just made a second drink. So I made one drink exactly to spec, and then I made a second drink, which was a Manhattan as I would normally assemble a Manhattan.
And what did you think of the differences between the two?
Well, let's let our listeners drink along with me live and on the air, even though this won't drop for like 4 days after we've recorded. But I'm now having the drink of the day, the Rat Pack Manhattan. It's fine. I can distinctly taste the difference. I can taste the dry vermouth in there. Frankly, I'm kind of wondering what would have happened if I would have simply left. Oh, and I use Cointreau as the orange liqueur. I'm kind of wondering what would have happened if I had left that in there instead of simply swirling the glass. The other thing is, because the recipe didn't call for it, I didn't put any bitters in here, which is something I would normally do. So I like it. But I'm now doing a regular Manhattan, which in my case is 2 ounces of the same bourbon, 3/4 ounces of the sweet vermouth, a vigorous dash of Angostura bitters, a vigorous dash of orange bitters. And let's see here. I think I like the regular one better, but I'm not sure. And in either case, there's a hint of orange from the orange bitters that I put in my regular Manhattan and from the swirl of Cointreau that I put in the Rat Pack Manhattan. I think in either one, I would enjoy it more if it was more orange forward.
Okay. So I went a slightly different direction than you. I'm going to start with my vermouths. I actually went with vermouth instead of the Lillet products. My dry vermouth is the Martini and Rossi Extra Dry, and this is not my favorite dry vermouth.
Nor should it be.
However, I paired that with the Dolan Sweet Vermouth, and I'm a big fan of Dolan products. I will say this: the Martini and Rossi Extra Dry is significantly drier than some other dry vermouths and the Lillet Blanc. I think that's an advantage here because I think the astringency, almost like tea that's steeped a little too long or a really intense green tea, that sort of astringent tanninish flavor of an extra dry vermouth, balancing the sweet vermouth out, that matters to me. I think that really makes this cocktail stand out in a way that I'm guessing doing it with Lillet didn't. My orange liqueur of choice was Grand Marnier, but I think since all you're getting is a little essence of orange oil left in the glass, I don't know that it matters. I still wouldn't do like a real dirt cheap triple sec, but I don't think the orange liqueur matters. Here's what I did and why I'm going to say that my version is way more to the heart of a Rat Pack themed cocktail than yours.
Do tell.
Well, what else would Frank drink but Jack Daniels?
You clearly have an expertise here, which I lack. I would have assumed that Frank Sinatra had money for better whiskey.
Well, you got to remember that Sinatra's heyday is in the 60s, and this whole notion of craft bourbon was not a thing in the 60s, right? Also, your big lines like Jim Beam and Jack Daniels regularly bottled their product at 90 proof. And Jack Daniels was a stronger, more assertive product back then. Now, the Jack Daniels I reached for was the bottled in bond because the old number 7 has been watered down to 80 proof. That was sometime in the 90s. I did ask my liquor store, do you have a 90 proof version of Jack Daniels on hand? And she did. It was a 1 liter bottle of Sinatra Select Jack Daniels.
Ooh.
But they wanted $160 for that 1
liter. Oh, good Lord, no.
Yeah. I got the bottled in bond for $32 out the door, even at West Texas overinflated liquor store prices. And I got to say, Bill, this may be my new favorite Manhattan. I do like a rye-based Manhattan with nothing but sweet vermouth and some Angostura. I like that spicy character, the warming character. But the balance of the sweet and dry vermouth with the more subtle flavor of Jack Daniel's bonded compared to an assertive rye. And weirdly, for the bitters freak that I am, the absence of bitters, there's something about this cocktail that I find really compelling, and I will be making this again.
So, and you just talked about it, but I want to camp out here for just a second before we move on. How did you put liquor in a glass and not add bitters? Because, by the way, listeners, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. We are so glad you're here. And if you've been with us for a while, you know that John uses bitters like most of us use, like name the common household product. He uses a lot of it all the time. How did you avoid putting bitters in a glass full of whiskey?
Well, I wanted to commit to the spirit of the drink of the day. And normally, when we do this and a cocktail doesn't have any bitters or not that many bitters, and I've done this several times on the drink of the day where I've tasted it and then as we record, I add bitters and usually bitters is an improvement. I'm going to say that in this particular case, my bitters are right here at hand. Where I record, I have my bitter shelf right here at my coffee bar because I like bitters so much. Sometimes I put orange bitters in my morning coffee. I am not remotely tempted to add bitters to this cocktail.
Hmm.
I'm going to say that. The other thing I'm going to say is, again, thinking about the 1960s and the Rat Pack, odds are that the vermouth that would have been big in that era, it would have been Rossi, right?
Hmm.
And I think this is a case where even though Jack Daniels is mass produced, Rossi doesn't make the world's best vermouths. They're serviceable, but they're not great. I think using the classic brand names from that time period were the right call for this particular formulation. And I have no desire to add bitters to this.
I have learned something new today. I would love to hear your report later on if you honored the drink of the day, and then if you had a second version later on that had the bitters in it.
Yeah, if I do that, I'll let you know. But at the moment, I'm quite enjoying it as is. So, Bill, do we have any other commentary on the drink of the day?
No, just that I am going to finish the drink of the day and the alternative, and I'm going to rinse, rather, and repeat until I decide which one is better.
I hope you reach a decision by the end of the episode. We'll check back in.
All right. Well, John, what we want to talk about today for our main topic is the trip that you took to the Cosmo with your wife, Lori. And I want to start with this because you bounce all up and down the strip. You bounce all up and downtown. When you're on the strip, you usually stay at MGM properties, which the Cosmo is now. What made you decide, before we get into the specifics, what made you and Lori decide to stay at the Cosmo for this trip?
So initially we booked New York, New York. My wife really enjoys New York, New York. It's the first place in Vegas that I ever took her. My wife is a sucker for those 90s sitcoms about New York. She loves Friends. She loves Mad About You. And there's something about walking around that property that kind of gives you that fake New York from the 90s TV shows feeling. That was especially true before they remodeled the room, but she likes the remodeled room. So we had booked that. Everything was fine. But then as we got closer and closer to the trip, I kept monitoring my offers and I kept checking prices. And we got the opportunity to jump to a base room at the Cosmo for not much more than we were going to pay at New York, New York, because we caught the Black Friday sale rolling out of Thanksgiving. So we went back and forth on what to do, but my wife decided, you know what? She wanted to go to Cosmo. We'd actually planned to take our firstborn, who passed away, to Vegas, and we had considered Cosmo for that trip. And that trip got canceled when we lost our child. And Lori decided, if the money's that close, let's go ahead and book a base room at the Cosmo. Well, me being me, I kept monitoring deals. Now, Bill, after what you went through this summer, I was cautious about that. So, listeners, if you go back and listen to our episodes, Customer Service, parts 1, 2, and 3, you'll hear Bill's misadventures of trying to price check and rebook rooms on your MGM offer. And there are pitfalls to do this. And once you've booked your MGM offer for certain dates, you cannot see what that rate for your offer would be on other dates, on the same dates and other properties. You're locked in. The only way to truly see your offer is cancel that reservation and hope there's a good deal waiting for you on the cancellation. And that bit Bill in the butt. Is that not fair to say?
That is, in fact, fair to say. And I'm not going to rant today. You should be proud of me.
So here's my workaround for that, because I found a strategy.
Ooh.
When you have your dates booked with your best offer from MGM, you can go and price a week before or 2 weeks before and see what it would be that week. Now, we know that prices fluctuate by date, but here's where the trick comes in. So we were going to check in on December 21st, which is what we did. So I went and looked at my MGM offer price for December 14th. And then I opened up a different browser and I did not log into MGM and I priced the trip for December 14th without my offer and December 21st without my offer. I saw the price differences between those two, and then I could pretty well extrapolate what the price difference would be with my offer because our offers are usually pegged to some percent off whatever the standard rate they have on the website is, right?
Right.
So by playing that game, I fell into a moment where pricing changes all the time, but where the algorithm was showing me that I could upgrade to a one bedroom strip view terrace suite at Cosmo for only about $27 more a night than the standard room.
And I want to stop for a second. I love your use of the phrase only about $27 a night. Go on.
Well, yeah, because I was like $27.95 or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
It was more than 27 and less than 28. Hey, your cat's behind you. And so I jumped on that. So we booked the one bedroom terrace. And I also happened to have some city bank points, which I used to buy gift cards. So basically, we were out of pocket $0 for a one bedroom terrace. Now, the price would have been $431.67, I believe, before we applied our gift cards. That's for 3 nights in a one bedroom terrace. You can almost never get that deal, but I stalked the algorithm and I caught a moment when the prices dropped and I booked that sucker quick, canceled what I had, rebooked with my offer, boom, got it done. So, listeners, we went through all of that with Bill back in the summer. Trying to reprice later can be dangerous because things can go wrong. And if you cancel a reservation with a price you like without relative certainty, you can get a price you're happy with. You're really running a risk. But my little strategy of comparing different dates and different rooms without my offer applied, and then looking at what my offer was for the room I have and things like that, I was able to get an approximation and get a pretty good idea. And my estimation and what we actually wound up with on the room rate was very, very similar. I don't remember what the discrepancy was, but it wasn't enough to warn me off. So you can shop prices after you've booked with your offer. You just got to do some extra steps, and you got to be a little bit of a travel lunatic, which I happen to be. So the booking was lovely, and I got a killer deal. In fact, while we were chatting before the recording, Bill, my credit card statement, my MGM credit card statement came in, and I put everything I booked on the MGM credit card. My bill this month is $263, and most of that is stuff I've spent here in West Texas, not in Vegas. So I went to Vegas for free and got a suite while being a low roller. So yeah.
That is truly impressive. But speaking of the suite, tell us about tell us about the room, that one bedroom terrace suite, because I've seen some pictures of you out there and I've got a little bit of envy. Tell us about the room, John.
So the room is absolutely beautiful. So when you come into the room, there's a living area with a sectional sofa and a pretty nice sized TV. And there's a wet bar off to your right. And the wet bar area, well, I guess it's not a wet bar. I don't think there's a sink, but you've got a little counter. There's two cabinets. One has a stocked mini fridge. Ballers on a budget, we don't touch the mini fridge. But the other side was an empty refrigerator that you could load with your own discount mini fridge by going over to Target or CVS or Walgreens or the ABC store, which we did. So you've got a really lovely living space. You've got nice glassware, ice bucket, the food they charge an arm and leg for that you don't want to buy, but also plenty of stuff for shelf stable and refrigerator items of your choosing, which is where our big bottle of rum, our big bottle of wine, and other assorted sundries lived. Going back from there, there's a double closet with a dressing area with a nice bench there, which was a really nice, restful spot to get dressed and changed and not really have your luggage spill into either the living room space or the bedroom space. The bedroom itself had a closing door, big king bed, another TV. Now, the weird thing is our room only had one remote, and it worked on either TV. So if
Huh.
you were in the bedroom, it worked the bedroom. If you were in the living room, that was kind of weird. I wonder why they were too cheap to have two remotes, but whatever. A big, nice queen bed. But the perk of this room is it opened up out to a strip view terrace balcony with a love seat and a chair and an end table to set your drinks on. Now, we were looking back down South Strip towards Aria, New York, rather than a Fountain View. The Fountain View suites were significantly more expensive. I want to say like $800 more for the same dates. I would love to have the Fountain View, could not afford it.
Mm.
But that terrace was my favorite part of the room. Now, the bathroom is absolutely huge, big, gorgeous walk in shower. But then there's also a Japanese soaking tub that has a window looking through across the terrace down the strip. In other words, they had a soaking tub where you could pour yourself an adult beverage and stare at the lights of Vegas, which was my wife's favorite part of the room. My wife has some mobility issues and some physical issues. A long soak with some Epsom salts and a big old glass of wine. She was a happy woman. And I got to say, if you can swing the room or catch a deal, that may be my new favorite room in Vegas, one step below the Fountain View penthouses at Bellagio, which clearly are superior. But this would be one step below that.
So the room sounds phenomenal, but not every trip to the Cosmo is going to involve a room that nice. Like, what was your general perception of just like the experience of being on the Cosmo property? And let me back up. I've never stayed there. I walked through there once with our buddy Derek. We got drunk at the bar and declared our never dying love for one another. And then whatever, I can no longer go back to the Cosmo. What was your experience like at the Cosmo?
So the Cosmo is just a beautiful property. It is definitely a property for a girls' trip or for a romantic getaway or a couple's trip. It is not the property for a guy's trip. There's a lot of art throughout the building. They even have old cigarette machines that have been converted where local artists could sell small pieces of either painted art or drawings or handmade jewelry or whatever in little boxes the size of cigarette packages, which is really cool. There's sculptures, there's paintings, there's classic photographs, and anywhere you wander in the property, you find more and more things. So that's absolutely phenomenal for just strolling around the property with your sweetie. My wife and I enjoyed that quite a bit. The dining options at Cosmo are really good. They range from super high end down to their food court. There's no cheap eats in Cosmo, mind you, but there's fair priced for the Vegas Strip eats at Cosmo. They also have social hours, and when we get into dining in a minute, we'll talk about some of the social hours we took advantage of. The Chandelier Bar is gorgeous. Down in the casino, they have a nice sports booking area. I will say this, I'm not a fan of gambling in the Cosmos casino. My favorite thing to do in the Cosmo gambling wise was the Fortune Cup horse racing machine, which they've since
Yes.
removed.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's gone. They don't have one of those anymore. The video poker odds are not very good, and if you want to get halfway decent odds, you're looking at being $5, $10 a hand, and you're still not the best possible video poker odds. There's no like cheap 5-cent machines. The Cosmo Casino floor leaves me cold, other than the sports book, which is gorgeous. So I don't recommend the Cosmo as my favorite place to gamble. I know there's people out there who disagree with me, argue with your mama. I'm not here for that. Personally, this is preference. I don't view Cosmo as a great place to gamble for me. But if you want to have a nice dinner or a drink in a very romantic, beautiful bar with your significant other, or if you want to see some art, yeah, Cosmo's great.
Huh. So you had talked earlier about meals, and again, the folks who've listened to us for a while will know we tend to plan our trips to Vegas around things we're going to eat. So where did you and Lori eat? Was it mostly there in the Cosmo? Did you go other places? Like, what did you enjoy?
So mostly we did in the Cosmo. We did we when we landed, it was one of those deals where it was already 2 something in Vegas, but we had barely eaten flying out of Dallas, and we were starving. And so the first thing we did was we went to Block 16 Food Hall, and we decided to split a sandwich at Lardo. I'm really fond of the porchetta, but Lori wanted to try their birria grilled cheese. I don't know how the white people from Portland, Oregon make better birria than anybody in far west Texas, but they do. And putting it on a grilled cheese with is a stroke of genius. So that was a gorgeous late afternoon lunch. Then during cocktail hour, we were snacky, but we didn't want a big, huge meal. So we wandered over to the cocktail hour, the sangria hour at Haleo. Haleo is Jose Andres, very elegant, high priced tapas place there at the Cosmo. But going at happy hour, they have good deals on several tapas options, and they have great deals on sangria and Spanish beer. My wife had a couple of sangrias. I had a couple of Spanish beers. We tried the croquetas de pollo, the conos, and a few other little things that Chef Andres rolls out there. And I want to say we had like 4 or 5 different little tapas appetizers and a few drinks and got out for $75 plus tax and tip. I'm not saying that's cheap for just drinks and snacks, but again, we're eating at a Jose Andres place on the Vegas Strip. That's a heck of a deal.
Yeah, that's
And
phenomenal.
yeah, the food was superb. And then later that night, we wound up getting a slice of secret pizza, which was pretty good too. The next day, I can't remember what we had for lunch, but it was something there on property. I think actually Lori skipped lunch and I had a late brunch at the juice bar, which had bulletproof coffee and a healthy whole grain egg McMuffin type thing. And that was perfectly lovely. But dinner that night, we got in the Uber. We headed down to Esther's Kitchen. Now, regular listeners have heard Bill and I both gush over Esther's. It did not disappoint. My wife had never been. They sat us in a table, and Bill, this is one of your gripes with Esther's was the noise volume.
What?
Yeah. The table was under the overhang for the upstairs cocktail lounge area. And because we were underneath the elevated loft space, the ceiling above us blocked out the noise. It was a very lovely spot. We could have a great conversation. Service was exquisite. The food items were tremendous. The sourdough service with the dips was great. We got cacio e pepe. We got the Pachamama pork chop. We didn't have room for dessert, and I still want to try Chef Tree's dessert. But they did bring out a digestive sip of Chinar, the Italian Amaro, which I am now hooked on Chinar. And the next time I mail you liquor samples, you're getting a sample of Chinar. We're going to make a Chinar based cocktail. Esther's was great, absolutely worth getting off the strip to go seek out. And then Tuesday night, well, actually Tuesday afternoon, we went to the happy hour at Ocean Prime. Ocean Prime is an elite 5-star type seafood and steakhouse that is basically in that new space between Cosmo and the shops at Crystal. And it is a very expensive restaurant. But again, they have a happy hour. They have lounge items and cocktails. All of them are half off during happy hour. Their lounge area is absolutely beautiful. And we use the in-kind app to pay for it. So on the in-kind app, you load up money before you go, and then you pay on your phone. When your check comes out, you type in the check number, and off it goes, and you're covered to pay for. It's a very simple way to do that. They have a reward system, but if you're a Costco member, at least running into Christmas, they were selling $65. They were selling $100 in-kind gift cards for $65.
Oh, good Lord.
So we had a $100 gift card loaded up. Everything was half off for cocktail hour. And the only thing that the gift card won't cover is gratuity. So you link a credit card to your in-kind account. It applies your gift card balance to that. We went slightly over the $100 and then we added a tip, but we were only out, I want to say $32 ourselves. for over $200 worth of food and drink because we had a discount and because we went at happy hour. So Ocean Prime is phenomenal. I had some of their sushi rolls. My wife had some of their short rib sliders. Wonderful place, and we really enjoyed that. And then, shocker, we wound up eating more pizza.
So, over the last couple of years, you've given our listeners some phenomenal baller on a budget tips, but I think that may be the best one that you've done yet. And we've talked about the property and the room and the meals, but I know you and I know your wife, and there had to be some sort of a show involved. So, what sort of shows were involved in this trip, John?
So there's a space on the upper level of the Shops at Crystals where they do things like the not Da Vinci, but God, I hate getting old. The son of a
It's
gun
better
with
than
one
the
ear.
alternative.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Oh, Van Gogh?
Yeah, Van Gogh. Thank you. Where they do the Van Gogh experience and the Disney experience. Well, they've been doing a show called In Poor Taste, Wine and Comedy. So it's two comedians and a sommelier and 5 wine samples. Tickets ran $69 a pop. So we went to that show. All 5 wines we tasted were good. The comedians were a little cheesy, but they were good. The wine expert they had, she was really knowledgeable. She happens to be the lead wine buyer for the restaurant supply company that does Resorts World and Fontainebleau. So she buys and selects the wines for several very high-end restaurants on the north end of the Vegas Strip. She knows what she's doing. And that was a really good time. Very small, intimate show in a very beautiful little space, and not very expensive as the cost of shows in Vegas goes. Most importantly, my wife was entertained and had a good wine buzz, which, gentlemen, as you know, is always advantageous for husbands in Vegas.
Well, John, I am a little bit jealous that you got to take that trip. Are there any last notes you want to share with our listeners about your trip to Vegas before we move on and talk about the Las Vegas news?
So I will say we did. I said we tried pizza at multiple places, and I need to get off my lazy butt and edit together a short form video. We actually had pizza at 3 places. I got a slice at one of the places in New York, New York. We tried Carnegie over at the new food hall at Miracle Mile, and we tried Secret Pizza. I would say that while Secret Pizza is not even in my top 5 favorite Vegas slices, it beat the pants off the other options. So if you're on that part of the strip, Secret Pizza really was the best slice we found on this particular trip. The other thing is, my wife decided to take a long soak in the tub while I still had way too much energy to be in the room. I went on walkabout and I found my way all the way down at Excalibur where they have opened a tiki bar. Some of you may have seen the video I pushed out on Twitter and Instagram of this tiki bar. Bill, I love tiki bars. You and I have discussed this.
Yes. Yes, you do, John.
What Excalibur has created is an abomination.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, and the space looks beautiful. And when I made the video, I was like, hey, this looks pretty cool. When I get done with this video, I'm going to sit down and order myself a drink. I did not, in fact, order myself a drink because I sat down and I looked at the menu, and all of the drinks were nothing like what they should be, right? They're Mai Tai. And granted, a lot of places make crappy Mai Tais, right? It seems like every summer-themed crappy tourist restaurant, Margaritaville, heck, sometimes even TGI Fridays will roll out Mai Tais in the summer, and they're always some ungodly pineapple and orange juice concoction with cheap rum. And folks, that's not a Mai Tai. We've done an episode where we made real Mai Tais that blend 2 different types of rum, add some orgeat syrup and a few other ingredients, and you're not drinking diabetes in a glass. Yes, a good tiki drink is sweet, but it's sweet balanced by spice, balanced by strong, assertive, complex rums, right? It's not a bunch of sugar and cheap rum. Well, Excalibur, the lead rum in a Mai Tai is Malibu coconut rum. Now,
Ugh.
if you are not a rum connoisseur or a tiki connoisseur, and you're like, what's the big deal? I like Malibu. Yeah, I did too when I was 19. But for adults who like rum, I shouldn't say that. I'll drink Malibu and Coke in a pinch. But still, yeah, a good Mai Tai should have two strong assertive rums, something from Martinique or somewhere else in the Caribbean, balanced with something funky from Jamaica. The juices should be minimal and balanced over against the orgeat and the bitters. Like what they made, it was awful. I looked at the menu. There was nothing on there I could drink. I walked away in disgust. Excalibur, you should be ashamed. And I got to say, you and I have talked about Vegas isn't dead. I've done some videos where I'm like, everybody says Vegas isn't dead. It looks dead. Oh no, it's 6 a.m. I actually did one of those at Cosmo. Here's the thing. My video at Excalibur, it looked dead because it was dead. It was prime hours. They should have been packed. Nobody was in that casino because it's a crappy dump with a crappy tiki bar. Curse you, Excalibur. Curse you, Dirty Castle.
We've been doing this for 2 or 3 years now, and I think that may be the most epic rant you've ever gone on. I'm just glad I was here to hear it. John, should we move on to the news?
I need a minute, so I think you got the first story. I got to collect myself. I'm worked up again.
I am here for you, brother. So, folks, moving on to news stories. Scott at Vital Vegas. Hey, what do you know? Our first news story is from Scott at Vital Vegas.
Hey!
Reported that the Rio is getting a new pizza joint named At Pizza, which
Ampersand Pizza?
It looks like At, which is, I don't think I think you may be the only person listening to this podcast who would use the word ampersand. It's a silly name. But speaking of silly names, pies on the menu include things like the Farmer's Daughter, Moonstruck, Elote Loco, and Pineapple Jacked, and a limited time pie called the Dickle.
Oh my.
Yeah, John, I know you've had a thing about wanting to go to the Rio for a while, but I have no idea what, except for elote, what any of those products even are. Does this make you maybe a little bit scared to go to the Rio?
I wouldn't say scared. I will say with names like that food better be good. And I'm willing to give any pizza place a try. But yeah, it seems extraordinarily silly. Extraordinarily silly.
Yeah, it is yet another thing not drawing me into that restaurant. Well, John, what else do we have in the news?
Well, Scott also shared some other restaurants comings and going. Hash House A Go-Go has closed their location at the Rio. Don't worry, big backs. They still got you at the Link and downtown at the Plaza. And they're making room for a concept that will be Rio exclusive called the Farmer's Table. Proper Eats Food Hall at Aria kicked out their Chicken Monger's Soul Bird, and they're bringing in Lucky Bird. So one way or the other, the Aria will still give us the bird. Bill, is that good news or bad news with Hash House bowing out at Rio? We've eaten there. What do you think of Hash House?
I like Hash House, but again, brother, if you want to go to the Rio, I will follow you. That is clearly your trip. Hash House is good. I don't know that it's as good as they think they are. Like, the thing about making a hash is that should be cheap food simply served. It shouldn't be one of those things that you're making a big production of, which is kind of what they do. So to be clear, I like Hash House A Go-Go. It's just, it's not absolutely a draw for me.
No, it's not for me either, which is why I'm happy it's closing at Rio and they're opening something else. Hash House A Go-Go is decent food in ginormous quantities. So if you want a whole lot of pretty okay breakfast, they got you. I would rather have less of much better breakfast or less pretty good breakfast at a cheaper price. I don't want to pay $20 for an omelet I need me and my 4 friends to polish off. So I'm okay with Hash House bowing out. I don't hate the place. It's not my favorite. I'm hoping Farmer's Table will either be more affordable or, if it's the same price structure, give us smaller portions of better food.
I am all for smaller portions of better food. One other news, Las Vegas locally has shared some photos of the Flamingo's new carpet. And folks, I will try to release some of these when I release the podcast. But if I can't, just know that the new carpet is extremely pink. I am looking at a picture of it right now, but the Flamingo seems to be doubling down on their theme. And this comes after a number of other changes at the Flamingo. So, John, is the Flamingo a property you have any interest in staying at?
So I did rant a couple of weeks ago that they were making some areas of the property look a little too fancy because Flamingo it's a lower tier property on the strip. When you stayed there and I was at the link, my room was worn, yours was dumpy. And if Flamingo wants to refresh the rooms but keep an affordable price, I am happy they're leaning back into their theming. I think more properties in Vegas should do that, so I applaud them for that. For me, the jury's still out about whether or not I want a Flamingo trip. We'll see when they update the rooms. If they can make those rooms nicer without trying to be luxurious and jack prices up where it makes no sense, maybe. But jury's still out for me. What about you, Bill? Would you ever do a return trip?
So I would. I'm a little sad that the Cuban bar I wanted to go to has subsequently closed. And I'm still so angry about my trip to the spa where there were people walking around, I mean, naked. It was the wet area of the spa, and other people were walking around on their phones with the cameras running. What the actual, I'm sorry, I'm not going to use it's not a family oriented podcast. I'm not going to use the words I was thinking, but that spa was so damn weird that I'm not saying never. I'm saying it takes something pretty specific to get me back there.
I will say this, and I'm not a spa person, but if I were a spa person, I don't think I would spa at the Flamingo. I think spa is the kind of thing where you get what you pay for. And
Yes.
Flamingo is kind of a Walmart Target property, which I'm cheap, so cool. I think for spaing, you need Macy's and above. If you're going to spa, pay for a better spa. And if you can't pay for a better spa, be like me and don't spa.
Noted. Well, what else do we have, John?
Facebooker Laverna of Las Vegas, which sounds like the name of a spa, posted a video showing off the new exterior and the entrance and some of the interior at Ellis Island, which looks vastly improved. It actually looks like a nice, attractive casino space instead of the gaming room at the Flying J truck stop in Abilene, Texas. Bill, did you look at the video, and does that change your opinion at all? Not about staying at Ellis Island, because that's still like a dumpy old Best Western in the rooms, although maybe it could become a nice boutique hotel, but about going back and trying to gamble at Ellis Island again.
I did not see the video. And I do need to give the Ellis Island another chance. So, listeners, you've heard me complain about the story before. When we went to the Ellis Island, I lost Rachel. If you're listening to this, listeners, Rachel is my wife. Rachel, if you're listening to this, I lost my customary $4.17 at Ellis Island. Everyone else, it may have been slightly more than $4.17. But I lost money doing things like I would hold a 20 against a dealer 6 and still lose. So I had a bad run, which caused me to be unfavorably disposed. What was also true is it was a pretty dumpy property in the middle of a reconstruction project. So sure, it is probably about time for me to give the place another shot. Not to stay, but just to go gamble.
Well, I will say this. The dining venues are great. I've eaten at the front yard. The gambling odds there are great. Now, granted, you had a run of bad luck. That can happen anywhere. But the table rules, the minimums, the odds, the slots are fairly loose, good video poker. There's a lot of good gambling to be done there. The dining options and drinking options are really nice. For me, I hope the next time we do a guys trip, I'd like to spend maybe catch dinner there, spend an evening gambling there. Again, I don't think the hotel's anything I want to stay at, but I'm willing to give them some of my money.
You know what? It is time, and I will go with you. Well, in other stories, essentially every news source imaginable posted that the Boring Company is now offering drop off at the airport from Resorts World and the Westgate, with plans to add pickup and transfer to the nearest loop station coming soon. Airport service mixes underground and some service street segments. So, John, do you think this actually helps make the North Strip a more manageable destination?
Yes. I absolutely do. In fact, when they add airport pickup to this, that's probably when you talk me into the Resorts World trip. I know you wanted to get the guys group up to the North Strip and possibly stay at Resorts World because you've always got Hilton points burning a hole in your pocket. Um, if I don't, I hate taxis in Vegas, and I don't trust them even when they have the flat rate because there have been reports of people getting overcharged and having to fight to get it back down to flat rate, yada, yada, yada. I've been long hauled before because believe it or not, Bill, sometimes I have a few drinks in Vegas and it's easy to long haul a drunk. I much prefer Lyft and Uber, but Lyft and Uber pickup at the airport can range from slightly inconvenient to my God, where did all these people come from? By the way, we've got a short form video on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram on that. If you guys want to go catch that, which just look for Dine Drink John or Dine Drink Vegas, and you'll hear me rant about what a madhouse that was 2 trips ago. So yeah, if I can get it to a nice, quiet Elon Musk mobile Tesla and make my way to the North Strip and then get back in the same way at a reasonable price with very little hassle, yeah, sold.
All right. Well, fair enough. What else we have going on, John?
So after a dangerously low 2025, Lake Mead ended the year only a foot lower than the same point in 2024. Still, barring a massive snow on the western slope sometime in the next couple of months, water remains a huge concern for the Las Vegas Valley. But I will say, I guess what I'm saying is, given how dry 2025 was, the lake's in better shape than it probably ought to be, which is somewhat hopeful. Bill, I know you like to monitor water levels. You got a take on this?
So, folks, in a previous life, I worked at an organization called the International Boundary and Water Commission, which handled international water transfers between the United States and Mexico. So I've spent a lot of time studying Lake Mead, and I'm worried about the long-term water future for Las Vegas. I will say that one of the most efficient government organizations I've ever heard of is the Southern Nevada Water Authority. They are remarkably good at managing the water that Southern Nevada does have. I'm worried, and all I can say, John, is I would encourage our listeners to conserve water when they're in Las Vegas. Don't do crazy stuff if you can help it, because we all want our favorite travel destination to make it over the long term.
That's right. Conserve those flushes. If it's brown, send it down. But if it's yellow, let it mellow.
You know, I may not be that conservative,
Okay.
but in our last news story of the night, according to multiple sources, the Raiders have fired Pete Carroll after a single 3-14 season, which admittedly was bad, but they still owe Carroll roughly $30 million on his 3-year, $45 million contract. The Raiders also owe significant money to former offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, who coached for only part of the 2025 season, as well as head coaches Josh McDaniel, who coached from 2022 to 2023, and Antonio Pierce, who was their coach in 2024. John, at what point is the Raiders' problem not all the variables? At what point is the Raiders' problem the constant, which is the only ownership group which may be worse than the ownership group of your beloved Cowboys?
I think you have dialed that in. The problem is the ownership, just like my beloved Cowboys, because the Davis family and the Jones families are freaking crazy. But the good news to all of that calamity on coaches is coach salaries don't count against the salary cap. And frankly, the Davises can afford it, right? I am going to make a bold prediction. Bill, it is, let's see, as I say this, it is 7:47 on Tuesday, January 6th, 7:47 p.m. Now, by the time we publish this on Friday, the Raiders may have already hired their coach, but we are recording on Tuesday night. It is not yet 8 p.m. I'm going to make a bold prediction.
Do
Shortly
tell.
before we logged in to record, the Baltimore Ravens fired longtime head coach John Harbaugh. I am calling it now. By the time this publishes, we may know if I'm right or I'm wrong. John Harbaugh will be the next head coach of your Las Vegas Raiders.
And how long does he get to stay?
I actually think if you can keep Max Crosby on that defensive line, John Harbaugh is a guy that free agents will want to play for. Vegas is a place free agents will want to live. I think Harbaugh gets 4 or 5 years minimum. And I think if anybody can make that team win, it's John Harbaugh. They may not win a Super Bowl, but I think you can build a relevant team that can contend in the AFC West.
That sounds like an Al Davis sort of hire. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll see if Mark's as smart as Al, because his dad would have been on this already.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, on that note, Bill, I think we've ran out of news stories. We should go ahead and bring this thing in for a landing. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find more Dine Drink Vegas and Dine Drink Travel content?
Listeners, you can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas, where we bring you short and focused videos which help you plan your next trip to Las Vegas. We're also increasingly putting content on the Dine Drink Travel YouTube channel, where we do everything else, including my trips to Ireland, as well as the executive lounges in the Las Vegas airport. You can find us on essentially every social media platform at Dine Drink Travel, where I particularly interact with John on X.
And I am at Dine Drink John. I would love to talk to you about Las Vegas or other travel destinations, about adult beverages, about coffee, about barbecue, and about the rumors about who will replace the terrible defensive coordinator, Eberflus, who just got his walking papers in Dallas, and whether or not the Cowboys are going to give me any more false hope next year. So like Charlie Brown, I can be fooled by Lucy only to not be able to kick the ball and land flat on my back as a football fan again. Anyway, listeners, we thank you so much for listening. If you have a friend that's planning a trip to Vegas and could benefit from our sage wisdom, or a mortal enemy that hates listening to old fat white Southern guys drink and talk and drink and talk, either way, please share our podcast with those friends and on every social media platform that you interact with, because by doing that, you're helping us build an audience so that we can keep bringing you this amazing, stupendous Las Vegas travel content. Thank you so much for listening, and until the next episode, happy travels.